Human civilization, as it arrived at 1914, was extremely pleased with itself, and rightly so, in a way. Steam engines had connected continents, the telegraph carried news at the speed of sound, art was being reborn, the cafes of Paris were overflowing with people, the concert halls of Vienna were expanding Mozart's legacy, medicine, engineering, literature. In every field, humanity was advancing step by step, but within this picture, something was missing. Not a trivial absence. On the contrary, the kind that had been growing for years, accumulating, the kind that, once it exploded, could level everything to the ground. That missing thing was tension, and Europe was at the very center of that tension. Let us first look at Britain. It governed the greatest empire history had ever seen. It had colonies in every corner of the world, a navy that commanded the seas. The phrase, "the empire on which the sun never sets," had not come about for nothing. This spectacle deeply unsettled Germany. Germany had unified late, industrialized late, but it had not been late in acquiring ambition. Kaiser Wilhelm wanted a larger seat for himself at the table of the world. He wanted colonies, he wanted sea power, he wanted prestige. France, meanwhile, was thinking not only of its future, but of its past. The territories of Alsace-Lorraine, lost to Prussia in 1870, had become a bleeding wound in the hearts of French nationalists. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, on the other hand, was an entirely multinational nightmare. Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Croatians, Serbs, Bosniaks, dozens of different ethnic groups under one roof, but of different minds. The empire was cracking from within. In the Ottoman Empire, the situation was even more complex. This ancient state, known by the nickname the Sick Man, had lost vast territories in the Balkan Wars and forfeited its prestige. Russia, meanwhile, had been dreaming the same dream for centuries, to reach warm seas. To achieve this, it was trying to establish influence over the Balkan Slavs. This had set it on a direct collision course with Austro-Hungary. When alliances were added to this equation, the picture became clear. Germany, Austro-Hungary, and Italy on one side, France, Russia, and Britain on the other. Everyone pledged to one another, a system arranged like domino tiles, where if one drew its weapon, the others would too. In such an environment, all that was needed was a single spark. June 28, 1914. Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was touring the city in an open automobile with his wife. His route had been announced in advance. In the region, Bosniak and Serbian nationalists dreaming of joining Serbia were active. Gunmen had been positioned along the route. The first assassination attempt failed. The thrown bomb exploded not under the vehicle, but beside it. The Archduke changed his route to visit his wounded men. His driver was unaware of this change and turned down the wrong street. As he reversed, the car came to a stop. And at that very moment, 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip was just a few meters away. The fatal shot was fired. The Archduke and his wife lost their lives there. These bullets would change not only the fate of two people, but of millions. Vienna erupted. They believed the Serbian government was behind the assassination, and this belief was not without foundation. The links between Serbian intelligence and the organization were disputed. Austro-Hungary went to Germany seeking approval. Berlin's answer was clear: "We support you." A lengthy and unacceptable ultimatum was sent to Serbia. Serbia accepted most of it, but rejected several clauses. This was not enough for Austro-Hungary. On July 28, 1914, Austro-Hungary declared war on Serbia. The domino tiles fell one by one. Russia declared mobilization to protect Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia. France was Russia's ally. Germany declared war on France as well. There was a treaty guaranteeing the neutrality of Britain and Belgium. When Germany attacked Belgium, Britain entered the war too. Within just 6 weeks, all of Europe's great powers had been drawn into the war. Germany had a plan, so as not to be forced to fight on two fronts. First, rapidly crush France in the west, then turn east and steamroll the slowly moving Russia. On paper, it was flawless, but there was a problem. France had built very powerful fortifications along the German border. Crossing directly was impossible. The solution, go around through Belgium, but Belgium was neutral. This neutrality was guaranteed by treaties signed by Europe's great powers. Germany described this treaty as a scrap of paper. For the British, that scrap of paper became a cause for war. Belgium put up far greater resistance than expected, but the Germans managed to reach Paris. At the Marne River, however, the French launched a miraculous counterattack and drove the Germans back. At this point, both sides understood what they had done. They could not win the war quickly, and so the trenches began to be dug. A double-sided trench system was prepared, stretching approximately 700 kilometers from the North Sea to the Swiss border. But do not imagine this as a trench. These systems were underground worlds where people lived, slept, fell ill, went mad, and died. Rats gnawed at corpses. Trench fever, dysentery, and the disease known as trench foot, which caused feet to rot, killed thousands before they ever saw battle. One side would shake the opposing line with hours of intense artillery bombardment. Then, at the given signal, soldiers would climb out of the trenches and advance with heavy steps toward the enemy positions. The opposing side would try to halt this advance with unceasing fire from machine gun emplacements. Sometimes tens of thousands of people lost their lives in order to gain just a few hundred meters. On the first day of the Battle of the Somme, the British suffered 57,000 casualties. In a single day, 19,000 of those were dead. Both sides had come to understand a bitter truth. Achieving a decisive victory in this war was nearly impossible. The only thing to be done was to slowly wear down the other side and break its strength. The battlefield grew with every passing month. Japan entered the war on the side of the Entente and took control of German colonies in the Pacific. Italy, despite being allied with the Central Powers at the outset, switched sides in the face of broader territorial gain promises offered by the Entente. This change of direction came to be cited as a symbol of Italian foreign policy's pragmatic, interest-driven approach. The Ottoman Empire, meanwhile, joined the Central Powers in the autumn of 1914. It became effectively engaged in the war by bombarding Russian ports on the Black Sea. This move opened the Caucasian, Middle Eastern, and Gallipoli fronts. Gallipoli was especially critical. The Entente planned to push the Ottomans out of the war and open a supply route to Russia, but Ottoman forces under the command of Mustafa Kemal turned this plan into a fiasco. For British, French, and Anzac soldiers, Gallipoli was nothing but mud, death, and disappointment. 1917 was the turning point of the war, but it came from an unexpected direction. Russia collapsed from within. Years of war, famine, and rage toward the rule of the Tsar first gave birth to the February Revolution, then to the October Revolution. When the Bolsheviks came to power, the first thing they did was declare a ceasefire with Germany. Russia withdrew from the war through the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, ceding vast territories. For Germany, this was a massive opportunity to catch its breath. Dozens of divisions from the Eastern Front could now be shifted to the West. But that same year, another development unfolded. America entered the war. The United States had been watching from the outside from the very beginning. President Wilson insisted on a policy of neutrality, but this neutrality grew increasingly difficult to maintain. Germany had declared submarine warfare to strike ships heading to Britain. In 1915, the passenger liner Lusitania sank. 1,198 people died, including 128 Americans. Public opinion was outraged, but war had not yet begun. The real breaking point remained secret. Germany sent a letter to Mexico proposing that it declare war on the United States and in exchange offered Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The British decoded this letter and forwarded it to Washington. When it was made public, the shock was seismic. In April 1917, the United States entered the war. Germany had very little time left. The German High Command saw the situation clearly. Before American forces could be fully deployed to the front, France had to be driven to collapse. The German offensives that began in the spring of 1918 were successful at first. The trench line was torn open. The Entente forces fell back. Irregular artillery fire began falling on Paris. But Germany's resources were being exhausted. Famine gripped the interior. Soldiers were tired, sick, and broken in spirit. After each offensive, there was no strength left to press on. In the summer months, the Entente launched a counteroffensive. Fresh American troops shifted the balance. The Central Powers collapsed one by one. Bulgaria in September, the Ottomans in October. Austro-Hungary surrendered in early November, November 11th, 1918. 11 o'clock, Germany signed the armistice. The guns fell silent. The Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919. The terms imposed on Germany were harsh. Enormous war reparations, territorial losses, the reduction of its army, and perhaps most importantly, being declared the sole party responsible for the war. This war guilt clause opened such a deep wound in Germany that millions of people never forgot it. 4 empires had passed into history: the Ottoman, the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian, and the German. The Middle East was redrawn with new borders. Much of those borders continue to be a source of political instability to this day. Approximately 20 million people lost their lives in the war, half of them soldiers, half of them civilians. And after all this suffering, the world gained not lasting peace, but only a fragile interlude of 20 years. The void left by Versailles was not only economic, it was also a psychological and political void. That void gradually became fertile ground for radical rhetoric. The agreement that ended the First World War had, in fact, also planted the seeds of a second global catastrophe. History is sometimes shaped not by the day the guns go silent, but by the years in which grievances accumulate. And the signatures put down in 1919 were the quiet harbingers of a world that would explode again in 1939.